Welcome back to the story world with myself, Brian Sethurst, and Allison Norrington. And you're going to be watching part deux of our interview with Elan Lee. Welcome back, Elan.
Thanks.
So when we spoke last week, dressed in the same clothing, because we do like continuity on the show, right?
Mhm.
We spoke a lot about your game, but we're this time going to dive back a little bit, right? And I'd love to know. I know you've said already that you played a lot of games as a kid, and you're the eldest of four. Is that right?
Indeed, yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. But where did this all begin for you? Did it begin at ILM? Is that where you
Hmm.
stepped into the world of entertainment?
Um, let's see. It really did, I think, start in my childhood, and really, being the oldest of four, it's my responsibility to make sure that there's always something to do. When someone's crying or someone's upset, my parents would be, they'd point the finger at me and say, "This is your job, fix this." And I loved it. I think I got that reputation and responsibility because I eventually became good at it. And um, so that kind of planted the bug for storytelling for me, because everything I would do with my siblings, everything I would do with my friends, all had a story basis to it. We always use story as the structure for all the entertainment that we would participate in. And so, yeah, when I got to Industrial Light and Magic, I was actually just an intern there during college, and that was a really interesting time for me because it was the first time I had applied really creative technological tools to storytelling. Um, as an intern, I'm mostly just following orders and doing the work that nobody else wants to do, but it was still just enthralling for me, and starting to realize there's a bigger audience. There's a way to tell stories on a much grander scale, and that really appealed to me. Um, but the next big step was getting to Microsoft and starting work on the Xbox. And they took a huge risk on me. They hired me right out of college. And the Xbox team was tiny. There were six of us, and they basically said to us, "Here's I don't know, several $100 million. Go make a box, and please don't mess it up." And I mean, it was almost as simple as that. I'm sure my bosses at the time would cringe if they heard me say that, but that was at least the perception from me and sort of the other grunts who were just like, "Well, I guess we're going to go build this thing, and I guess we'll figure this out as we go."
They must have
Um,
seen something in you. Can you tell us what the interview process was?
um, there were two phases. The interview process for me at first was just I was trying to get hired as a games producer. And so the first interview was before there was an Xbox group at all. And it was me just saying, I'm very organized. I understand what a success is, what a failure is, how to work with developers, how often to check in with them. I'm an organized person. If you give me a project, it probably isn't going to fall apart for lack of organization. And that was the first job, right? They said, okay, you are what's called a program manager in the games group. And that was like my first, I don't know, let's call it 6 months. Then I met a guy named Jordan Weissman, who continues to this day to be the smartest person I know, my mentor in all things.
And a
And
lovely guy.
yes, just I mean, Jordan is family to me. And Jordan was the creative director for the Xbox group, and he assigned projects to me, and I would work on those projects. And one day, what I tended to do whenever a design doc came through is I kind of rewrote it, because I thought, well, I think, yes, I'll organize it. Yes, I'll manage the team. But what if we did this? What if this level worked this way instead? I couldn't help myself. And one day Jordan pulled me aside and said, I have two things to tell you. One, you're a horrible producer. And the other is you're an incredible designer. So why don't we switch your role? And he was really the one who brought me into that new role and said, the title he gave me was design lead in the Xbox group, or lead designer. And from then on, my job was to just do that second part, was to just say, hey, but what if, and fill in the blank there. And I completely fell in love with it. Luckily, the Xbox, the launch portfolio, right, those first six games that we pushed out the door, did really, really well. It kind of gave us all this wonderful reputation of we know what we're doing. We only know what we're doing because we worked with incredible people and Microsoft was willing to support us. But, we got a lot of credit for pushing those games out the door.
Do you
And
remember
then,
what were
yeah,
the first 6 games?
the first 6 were, let's see, Halo, the big one,
Mhm.
Project Gotham Racing, NFL Blitz, Abe's Odd World, no, Abe's Odyssey, uh, Fusion Frenzy, and the snowboarding game whose name I'm totally blanking on. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, I don't remember. Yeah,
That's pretty good. You're lucky we didn't ask you to do it in one syllable so that.
yeah, right. And also keep in mind, this is more than 20 years ago at this point. So this is, yeah, that was. I'm proud of myself. I'm taking my 5 out of 6 right there.
Really good.
And so from then on, I kind of got bitten by these 2 bugs. One bug was I really love telling stories and being in the design role, and 2 is I want to keep working with Jordan. And so we got the Xbox out the door. Jordan and I actually both resigned from Microsoft at the same time to go start a series of companies together under his guidance. He always served as either the CEO or creative director, often both. And we started marketing companies, we started clothing companies, we started gaming companies. And it was this incredible journey for me to learn how to become a better storyteller and how to use technology to better tell stories.
Brilliant. Do
I,
you know what? Sometimes in life you just meet somebody and you have that click. And I've met so many people in my life that have done that for me. But also, there was a guy I remember that joined us for Story World, and he had an amazing job at Disney. And he'd said to me that when he was 17, he was a real kind of tearaway, had no focus or direction. And he went into a design studio. Literally, his dad just pushed him in to try to get him off
Yeah,
the streets, and it changed his world.
yeah, love
I
that.
just love them
well,
moments.
let's fast forward to alternate reality gaming.
Yeah,
What that is, because for a while it just rose up so fast. It was the talk of everything. But
yeah.
interestingly enough, technologies that came with ARGs are now part of storytelling. It's like they're not separate ARGs anymore. It's just integrated. And not that I wrote this book because I didn't, but Elan, it brings to mind there's a great book out right now called The Future is Faster Than You Think,
Hmm,
which is
I
all
don't know that.
about that's Jamie Dimonson, not Jamie Dimonson. I can't remember the authors, but you'll find the book. But it's all about this convergence of technology that makes quantum leaps possible, disruptions in
Hmm.
technology,
Oh, that's really
and
neat.
so it's like, well, why can we have flying cars in the future? Because of this, and this, and they're all accelerating, and then they converge, and that was kind of how I was looking at alternate reality gaming, which you had story worlds,
Right.
you had canons, you had the way it worked, and then you had an open door for people to become part of the story world. Again, going back to our first segment, those people becoming entertaining, not just being entertained, but
Yeah,
becoming
yeah.
entertaining, which is, I guess it's the hallmark by which you live. So, can you talk about the first ARG and how you got involved and what that was?
Yeah. Um, Most paths lead back to Jordan. So let's see. I remember the day I was sitting in my office at Microsoft, and Jordan walked into my office with Steven Spielberg because that's a
I
thing that
see.
happens. Yeah. And they explained to me that that Microsoft had just licensed Spielberg's new movie, AI, and we were going to be doing a series of Xbox games around AI, and they had put me as the lead on a few of those games, and let's get to work. And so, I
2001. That's like nearly 20 years ago, that movie.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So after picking my jaw up off the ground, I got to work, and we built I don't know, I want to say like 4 or 5 games for it. We built a racing game, and we built an adventure game, like a Sierra type game. We built there's a gladiatorial combat game. Like we took all the scenes in AI and figured out what the underlying theme was, and we built games around those themes. And then we all went to see. Oh, sorry, I should back up. The problem with those games is that we needed a way to connect them together, to take audience members from game to game to game, because they were jumping around the plot, the story of AI quite a bit, and we needed the glue to keep everything together. And so we wrote this narrative of a few of the characters that would actually move from game to game to game, and we plotted out their narrative arcs, and we literally called it the glue. That was all it was there for. And and then two really amazing things happened. One is we thought, oh, we went to go see a screening of the movie, and I don't know if you remember the movie AI, but the quick version is a story of a robotic boy who gets adopted by a family, and all he wants is the mother's love. That's it. He wants so badly to be a human boy, like the Pinocchio story. He wants his mother's love, but it doesn't work out that way. His family rejects him. They literally leave him alone in the woods and drive away. His heart is broken. He searches the world for love, for anyone who will accept him. Ultimately, doesn't find it, witnesses the end of humanity, the death of all human beings. And that's where our story ends. And you don't walk out of that film thinking, oh, I can't wait to play the Xbox game. Like we picked wrong. So while it was a great movie, it was not appropriate for video games. So we went back to the office and essentially canceled all the games
Oh,
like
wow.
that day. And we thought, well, okay, that is what it is, but
Mhm.
we're still on the hook to help Spielberg out with this film, and we still have this glue, and we love the story that's in the glue. I wonder if there's a way to release that as a game. And Jordan took me out to lunch so we could brainstorm it. And I remember we were sitting down and eating sushi at some sushi place in Redmond, and Jordan's phone rang, and he looked at me and he said the kind of world-changing sentence. He said, "What if that was the game calling me right now?"
Oh,
And
wow.
My God.
and I just like I like froze, and my brain starts dripping out of my ears because I was like, that changes everything.
Yeah.
What an amazing statement that is. And we spent the next 6 months rewriting the glue, which we ultimately called the beast,
Mhm.
to be delivered over phones and websites and fax machines and live actors, and essentially using the real world as the 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 canvas on which to paint this picture.
Wow. That was the whole Janine Salah thing, wasn't it?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That was the
She
protagonist.
the Janine Salah and the telephone numbers, and there was so much stuff with that. I was at an event with Dan Hon, I think probably 2011, so 10 years after that, and Dan was showing me one of the sites that he'd gone on because he was one of the fans and followers, and it was very like MS-DOS looking site that
Yeah.
he'd gone
Yeah.
to. And
Right.
just joking around, we're just having lunch or coffee, and he said, "Let me just put something in here, see if there's anybody here." And as we're just having lunch and chatting, within probably 20 minutes, somebody popped up. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hey, Dan, is that you?" And he's like, 10 years later,
10 years later. Yeah.
it's still there.
Yeah. That game, it formed lifelong friendships. There were at least 3 weddings that I know of that were the results of the fan communities around that game.
Mm.
Tattoos that people got, it really changed a lot of people's lives because it wasn't like a regular video game. It made you the entertainment.
Well,
There you go.
it's interesting to me because it laid a foundation, and like the evolution of any technology or new business opportunity, you have, and forgive me, community, you have a ghettoization that happens where people
Hmm.
focus uniquely on that and not build bridges to other stories. At the same
Yeah.
time, you progress a little bit, and you had John Hankey and you had Ingress, which now just became this millions and millions of players around the world. And
Yeah.
then you have someone like Tim Kring, and this is when you and I, Elan, met at Fourth Wall with Tim and our team. You have someone
Yep.
with Tim Kring's credentials in television as a storyteller, who then brings the aspect of television and video and story worlding and storytelling into an ARG and takes that to the next level. But
Absolutely.
there was a moment, and that was really interesting to me because, all of a sudden the city of London for us became that playing board. There was whole it's I refer to it as like there's the prologue, which is everything that happened and people joining conspiracy for good online, and
Right.
burst out from online onto onto the playing board of London, and actually was social benefit storytelling, in that the participation of the audience actually could make a real world difference, which is also now built on the foundation of ARG and has become part of what I think is content in social entrepreneurship.
I
And
love that.
so, really, what you built was a foundation that sort of, it's like Mission Impossible. You light the fuse, and it's just, and but I kind of want to ask because you keep innovating and you've returned to something in the board games that is so simple and so resonates after something that was so and I don't mean this the way it sounds, after something that was so complicated to build and to get into, and then returning to something so basic and so simple and so easy for people to get involved in, rather than trying to find your place in a story world. You basically, give us our place in the
Yeah.
story world. So I guess I want to ask you, in your own evolution, and this might be difficult for you to say, but in your own evolution, what is ticking in your head for what's next in the story
Hmm.
worlds that you're creating?
Um, it's a tough one to answer because I certainly don't know what the future looks like. But I will say that there's a the biggest thing that has hit me about this is like creating alternate reality games and creating even video games in general was so much fun, but slow and complicated because you are responsible for creating the cadence of consumption. Um, and that's a lot of work. That requires weekly updates. That requires constant refreshes because the players, once they consume something, they are ready to move on to the next thing. Certainly the case in alternate reality games, a lot of the case in a lot of video games now. What I love about tabletop is that has switched because we can really focus on we are going to provide a tool set, not an entertainment set. I don't have to keep refreshing it. The cadence, there is no cadence. It's deliver it and you're done. And now the players are going to be the custodians of that entertainment. And I love that model. I really think it's a very, very important new area for me to explore. The more I learn about it, the more enamored I get with it. And I think what comes next is there probably is a little bit of room for complication in there. Um, there is a little bit of space to say, you buy this thing, you have an experience. Now, this next thing that comes out will not start from scratch. It will add to the previous thing that you have been entertained by.
So
And
an iterative story world.
Slightly, yeah, yeah. So we have a game called Throw Burrito, and very simple game. I love it. It's a dodgeball card game. Half your time is spent collecting cards, trying to complete sets before the other users, and at the same time there are these foam squishy throwable burritos that people are throwing at you, and you have to collect cards while dodging this ridiculous dodgeball game. It's insane. It's really fun, but one of the things that we're going to be exploring next year is what it means to release a sequel to that game. Because the game doesn't need a sequel, start to finish, it's done. The sales have been tremendous. Everyone has fun. There's incredible fans out there. But I want to see what happens when we say, all right, that was our baseline. Now let's add a little bit to it. Without being complicated, what if there was another thing you could bolt onto the top of that? What would that experience look like?
So let me throw this out to you for a second. Um, in the story world of Elan Lee, if you will, have this tremendous technology background, and you are a tinkerer, because I remember being at your home and having the floor vibrate because you had this amazing audio system that you had built out of an idea and out of a desire. So there is this knowledge, and I would venture to say mastery, of technology and adapting technology. Then you have over here your history as the oldest of four that is predisposed towards towards creating games. And now, I'm actually going back to the future as faster than you think. Not that I'm trying to predict your future, but so now you have Elan Lee, who is the sum total of all these experiences. Is it possible? Because now we're talking about, in the last segment, we talked about playing Poetry for Neanderthal over Zoom. Is it possible that something will occur that allows for a convergence of all your knowledge from video to board games that comes up with the next, what I would say is disruptor. It's almost like you
Yeah.
jumped ahead of everything and you created a gaming reality out of mastering technology, and then you jump back to reinvigorate board games. And I'm looking and I'm saying, how might this converge? So I'm just throwing that.
Yeah. Um, I have a notebook filled with ideas on how to solve exactly that. What does that next step look like? None of them are worth building yet, but they all feel like they're taking steps closer and closer to hitting that threshold because I want to build that. I'm really interested in combining all of these things together. Um, but to get there, I'm going to take a lot of baby steps because I don't ever pretend to know the answer. All I can do is say, I've made a ton of mistakes and I don't ever want to make those same mistakes again.
Well, I have to say, our this discussion could go on and on and on because there's so much. It's like Allison and I, we're familiar with the world of Elan Lee, and we can only dip our toe in the water for our audience. So we're probably going to ask you to come back when the
I'd be delighted.
when the next iteration comes after Poetry for Neanderthals. In the
Cool.
meantime, we're going to rejoice in that game because it's holiday time and it's already under the tree. Allison beat me to it. She bought her version. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm still back playing Exploding Kittens. So now it's under the
I
tree.
got
So I don't know what I did with
Uh,
Exploding Kittens,
it.
but I just want to thank you, Elan, for joining us today. And it's inspirational because you kind of, this is my observation, is you're going along and you're so open to inspiration, to something coming out of the blue, and then following that. And that is so, to me, it's the essence of storytelling. It's like writing a novel and having one ending in mind and it turns out to be something else. And I think that's really important for storytellers to be open to those moments of inspiration and be flexible in how something might be executed. And in that, my friend, you do better than anyone I have spoken to.
Oh, it's very kind of you to say. And like, what a perfect way to sum up the way my brain works is just try everything, expect failure, just fail as quickly as you can so you can move on to the next thing.
Well, thank you so much. And Allison, thank you for being my partner in crime here. It's always just like a joy because our minds, as you can see, we inhabit the same story world, but we come from different ends of that world. And and I don't think anyone would argue that the two of us, is, if not the three of us, are characters. So I just want to thank you all and thank the audience for joining us. And we'll see you next time on the Story World. Ooh,
Thanks.
Story Hour.